I wish I would have known, and wish I would have known how competitive it was. I wish I would have known how to be patient. I wish, it was hit on earlier that we want so much so fast that we're not ready for it. And you get disappointed, you get discouraged, and you think, oh, gosh, I worked the first round playoff game, then I probably should work the next week. And I should probably work the week after that. And you want everything to be given to you right away without just taking the time and looking back and saying, you know what, this is a good first step. Next year, my goal is to be step number 2. And my next year is to take the next step up and be step number 3. So to really just take it all in and understand that there's a process and understand that our competitive nature and our competitive will and fortitude to do the best sometimes doesn't work out. And we can't be disappointed with that.
That's one part of the business I'll never understand. I still talk to guys, Terry McIntyre, Steve Good, all these old time, Larry Shepard, all these guys that I used to referee with, that, for $125, we would share rooms, 3-door room, because we were making them. But I would always tell these young kids when they were evaluated, I go, you know what? They might have some old school ways. It might not be the most current, but just show them the respect of listening. And that's okay. Just listen. You don't have to art. It's not about an art. And the one thing you learn, and I'm sure the old time guys will tell you, as soon as you retire from this profession, there are very few people saying,
there's times where you try something and you try to use humor. You try and use, something that you think came in my head. This would be just a great idea. And I'm going to use it right now. You're like, holy moly, that did not go well. So, there's those times where you're trying to explain something and you kind of might be a little pop-offish or, a little smart with it. The times that I've tried that, it's not gone well for me. And I've had to go back and apologize and be like, hey, you know what I said to you last quarter or what I said to you in the last time out, that wasn't appropriate. I apologize and I will do better. And so every time that I've tried to do that, it just hasn't worked for me. So my advice would be, don't try it unless you're really, really good at it, which is the 0.1%. And then if you do try it and you do fail, go apologize. Just don't be the one to be like, I'm right. I'm always right. Just apologize. I'm sorry. I should have never said that. And let's move on.
And now, episode 13, letter L. Levity. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta with special guests Bob Schofield and Tyler Trimble on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas, back again with my co-host Nate Acosta. Today we bring to you 2 guests who are 2 of our longtime friends and definitely a part of our officiating families.
On today's episode, we are covering the letter L, and our guests will be talking about the word levity. We are looking forward to talking about how important it is not to only enjoy what you are doing, but also why you need to have a sense of humor as an official.
Guests today are Division I basketball referees Bob Schofield and Tyler Trimble. Guys, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us. Before we get started with our letter and our word of the day, can you each tell us a little bit about your officiating journeys, how you got started, and where you are today? Mr. Schofield, we'll let you go first, sir.
Well, started my journey in New Jersey after I got out of the military, a local football referee who was big time at the time, who actually changed the NCAA's rule on you had 57. When I started officiating, 57, you couldn't ref in the NCAA. And that was the guy who took it to court. His name was Ray Bucky Jack. So he got me involved in officiating. I started doing football. And I started doing Pop Warner. And then I got the bug. And then I said, well, I'll do basketball. I never played football. I'll do basketball. And I started doing basketball and been pretty lucky, 31 years Division I. So that's where I'm at now. We'll see how much longer I go. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Bob. And Tyler Trimble, you're up, sir.
For me, my dad was a high school athletic director. So high school athletics were the cornerstone of my upbringing. I spent many hours in a gym, on a field, whether it was picking up the stuff or watching the referees. And one of the referees started talking to me one day, and it just kind of all started from there. So really got my start in 2002, refereeing high school while I was still playing basketball. Then I went to junior college 2005, became a Division I basketball referee in 2010. So we're on year 14, which seems to be just flying by. But super excited and also referee a little high school football. So I've been doing high school football this is year number 10 as well. So super enjoy it. It's a great spot to be.
Awesome.
Awesome. So before we actually get into some of the podcasts, Bob, the first time I had met you was the Southern Arizona, officials camp, and we just had a recent episode with Penny and Chris Rastatter, and you and Chris used to host the Southern Arizona officiating camp, and that's kind of how I met Dana. It's kind of really what started my officiating journey. Can you tell us what was one of your favorite things about hosting that camp every year?
The most fun we had was we opened it up to like New Mexico officials, Phoenix officials, and Tucson. And our goal was always never to charge them, because we would sit down and say, you know what, look how blessed we are to work Division I basketball, make the kind of money we do. Let's give back and not make this a money maker. So that was one of the proudest things. Plus, we look back at all the people that we helped get into junior college, Division I, the high school groups we did, that became crew chiefs or got a state playoff. That really, everybody asks, what determines success of things? And, to people, some is money, how far you go in the tournaments. But you know what? It should be for what you have done for other people, in my opinion. And I think that what we did in Tucson, the product we put out, was outstanding for the size of the town that we have. You guys know in New Mexico, you got to get outside of your little corner. And Tyler's a good example. He came down to us his first year. He came to us. He was one of our videos because we told him, dude, you want to make it? You got to get out of Seattle. You got to come down. Here's somebody else. Because we keep one thing in Tucson, I'd bring guys in from all over the country just so they'd hear a different voice. The message was the same, but just delivered a little different. Like, Chris is a lot smarter, book smart, Bible. But I have the other part of personality where I'm a little crazy. But we gelled well together. So I would irritate someone. I go talk to Chris. And then when he would get pissed at him, deal with this. So we had a successful thing. COVID kind of shot it in the butt. And, and it sure didn't hurt Chris and where he's at right now. So
No,
I think we did a great job.
Oh, you did, and you talked about crazy. I mean, the first time I ever took a whistle to the back of the head was from Bob Schofield, and anybody that knows Bob, right? His biggest pet peeve is leaving the ball on the floor, and so we go to a timeout. I set the ball on the floor, and I eagerly run over to whoever our clinician was to go listen to, what they had to say, and whack, and I'll leave out the word that he actually used, but don't ever leave the ball on the floor. And so I ran over there, grabbed the ball, came back. But that was, and that's, to this day, that's one thing I will never do is put the ball on the floor. That's a Bob Schofield pet peeve.
That's
You need is a whistle in the back of the head. That's all it took. Time, and you learned. That's awesome. And you're right, Bob. I loved what you said about getting outside of your own backyard. And that's something that I think as leadership at the state association level, if there's ways that officials can go somewhere else and hear, like you said, hear the same message delivered from a different person or in a different way that maybe resonates with them, that's so important. And that was always why I loved seeing so many officials back home at your camp, because I knew the quality of the clinicians. I knew what was being taught there. And I saw such growth with those officials because they were in an environment that they really could thrive. So I think that's such an important message. It's easy to just go to your own local camp all the time, but it sure does help you grow if you can get out and experience something different. So the officiating family, of course, is the biggest small world ever. So I actually met Bob through the late Luna, who was a dear friend of all of us on this podcast. He was a friend of ours, a basketball official and assigner from New Mexico. And then I met Tyler through a previous episode guest, Jimmy Casas. Tyler and I met, and I believe we were just fast friends. We have the same sense of humor and just hit it off immediately. So Tyler, one of the things I remember is when Jimmy had invited you to serve on the Referee Educational Forum staff back in New Mexico. What was that experience of being on that staff like for you?
It was an experience. And what happens was is that, as you said, you get out and you're with different people and you're thriving in an environment that is educationally based. And so, like your previous guest, Penny and her camp, and Bob and Chris and their camp, and now Jimmy with the Referee Education Forum, what we were doing was just educating and spilling knowledge and letting people hear what other people had to say. And it was never, this is the way of the land, this is it, but it gave other people experience from people outside of the area. So what Jimmy did and had bringing in all sorts of walks of life, men's basketball, women's basketball, high school basketball, professional basketball, across the board, they got to understand what life was really like as a referee and what as a basketball referee. And so being with those people, being with the Chris Rastatters and being with Jimmy and Aaron Schlesinger and Donnie Nunez, and the list can go on and on and on. But just being in that same room and having the conversation only provided me with more, I would say, gumption, fortitude, experience, knowledge. I mean, you could go through the alphabet, I think, and then A to Z for sure, and hit all of those things that Education Forum did for us and did for me.
And it's crazy because I think that as we educate, and Bob talked about it, you're talking about it. The biggest thing that we've all become better officials by giving back. All right, we've all gotten better because we've gone out and we've gotten really comfortable with being uncomfortable and getting into those classroom sessions and those training sessions. And I talked to Chris about this. Is the very first camp that I went to, I mean, when I went to Southern Arizona, I immediately knew that I wanted to referee the rest of my life. But I also, in that moment, I knew that I wanted to stand in front of the room like these guys. And not because of the games that they were getting, but because there was something that was special about standing in front of the room, teaching others how to referee. And so, hey, you guys are two guys that just always have a good time, whether it's on the court or off the court. And I've had the opportunity to work with both of you, and that gets into our word levity. Officiating's not easy. What we do night in, night out is stressful. It's hard. But how is it? You guys both do a good job of kind of just infusing that levity, right, and humor into what we do. So this is a question for you. Like, why is it important? Why do we do that?
Why do we have fun?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? In any job you have, you want to try to have a little bit of fun. I'm a retired postal. There were some tough days. But in officiating, you already know when you blow your whistle, there's a good chance 50% of the people will be happy. And I learned a long time ago, as long as those kids that I'm refereeing believe in me, I got a good shot to win. And you know what? We all have to develop different ways. Like, people can't talk to people like I talk to them, but because, sometimes I go a little bit off course, and I know. But at the end of the day, someone once told me, you're the only guy I know that in the first quarter, those kids hate your guts. And at the end of the game, they're waiting for you outside the locker room to tell you things. That's important. Because you can have a game every night. There is not one person that's ever got every call. Now, we all know we have people that think they do. However, they don't. And that goes from the NBA down to junior. And what's wrong with laughing at yourself? I mean, I've done some crazy, and I can laugh at myself because at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. But how are we going to leave the game when you're done? What are they going to say? Like, best thing I ever heard was, "We hope you referee all our road." And that's all I wanted to hear. And I'll take that.
So Bob, like, I mean, and you're the master of just making your crew feel comfortable. What is it? I mean, what is your thought process in that? Are you being yourself? Are you doing that to make your crew comfortable? Or, because, you have fun. We have fun.
Well, I just think, every night I go out there, last night I worked with somebody I've never eaten. And I just said to her, "Don't believe everything you heard of me. You make your own assumption. And then you can tell me after." Because my goal every night we go out there is I tell them, "I'm not worried if we have a double whistle. I'm not worried if you call something in front of me. It's not the end of the world. And I'm not going to embarrass you." And I hate when I see some of my counterparts berate officials during a game. What does that do? It doesn't help. You put a young person in the tank. Now we go from 3 officials to 2. And how much fun is that?
Yeah, that's not
And
fun.
it's changed a lot with the money and all the things have changed from when I started. Because when I started, I learned more about officiating in hotel bars than I did at the games because we didn't have video. So where would you learn? You learned at the bar after the game. And
Bars and cars, baby.
And you would sit there and listen, and you'd be like, "Did I do that?" And they'd be like, "Why would I tell you?" That's the big difference now. Now you go in at halftime, you can watch all the plays.
Yep. And, I can vouch for that because, in the couple games that I've worked with you, it's definitely fun for 40 minutes and we have a good time and feel super comfortable. But then when we get into that locker room, you also give back, right? You're educating in a way that's positive. You're not going in just hammering us. And so those are the types of crew chiefs that, as I, hopefully move into those crew chief roles, you're the example of kind of what it needs to be. And so we thank you for that, for sure.
Well, I think
Tyler.
And a lot.
Oh, go ahead. No.
And a lot of that too comes from, now I just work for Violet. Violet is very young. And, that probably goes, back in the days, when we used to just get beat up every day. And now it's kind of like, you know what? What's that going to do? This is what we need to do to get better. And you put it in a nice tone of voice. And that's all you can do. But I don't think, raising your voice and telling someone, "Why don't you rotate?" You know what? If you rotate from the lead and you can make a call and it's correct, good for you. So, that the guidelines of the mechanics book, they're just guidelines. Nothing. You go where you need to go to referee and make. That's all.
All right, Tyler. What are some things that you do to make it fun? Add that levity to the game.
So as my day job, I say, we get to work at a golf course. It doesn't need to be stressful. So it's kind of the same thing. There's so much stress and so much pressure on us every night when we walk on the floor, where everybody does dislike us. They don't want to be our friends. They don't care. We're wearing the uniform that nobody likes. And so I try and hit it with, it doesn't have to be stressful. And I'm going to go out there and try and be as stress-free as I possibly can, make the best decisions every night. Unfortunately, those decisions sometimes are not the right decisions. And you have to learn from it and be able to throw it behind you and move on to the next one. Because once you don't move on from the next one and you just sit there and wallow in yourself, you can't get better, or you can't move on, and you can't go to the next game, and you just sit there in this rut and it just spins. So I always say, don't let it be stressful. Nothing we can control. It's all in your control. And just have fun. Because at the end of the day, we're all we got.
That's a true story. So kind of as a follow-up to that, talk a lot in this podcast about humanizing officials. And really part of that humanization is showing that officials do, in fact, have a sense of humor. So how hard is it to balance looking the part and being all business during a game with showing that you do have a personality and that you're enjoying what you do?
I'm a smile guy, and I like to smile during the game. And I like to have fun. But that also, like you said, doesn't portray the all business side of it. And there's a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of things that are happening that you don't really know about. But why don't you just take the time and smile to the scorekeepers, smile to the clock operator, tell them hello, ask them how their day is. The ball kid that comes out and that's wiping the floor, smile at them during the timeout. Ask them how they're doing. Yeah, it's very, very simple. Ask your partners, smile at your partners during a timeout. Like, hey, how are you? Is everything good? We're good? Nate, you doing well out here? And we just have this just a regular conversation after our business is done. But then that shows people that, hey, you know what? He is actually having fun out there. And be that person that's the one having fun, not just, I'm all business. I'm going to take care of this every single time and bang, bang. No, show them that we are that person, that we are humans. I'm a facial expression person, and it probably gets me in trouble more often than not. But just have that. Be real. Don't act like you're a robot out there, because it's not going to get you anywhere. But really take care of the people that are the ones taking care of you. The security guard, the athletic director, the person that's letting you in the locker room, the person that's standing outside the locker room. You know, one person here on this podcast that's taught me a lot. His name is Bob Schofield, but he told me, why don't you remember everybody's name that you run into? And at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones asking how you're doing and where you're at and how your family's doing. And, you might not go to dinner with them. You might not go to the bar with them, but they at least might ask you. That's all we can care about. Those are the only people that we care about.
Absolutely.
From the high school standpoint, because I know you were talking a little bit about the kid that comes out to wipe the floor. Obviously, in the high school game, we don't have that, but certainly I think it's so important for officials to understand the importance of smiling at your table. They're part of your crew. So, I used to tell officials back home all the time, I'm like, oh my God, you look like you would rather be having a root canal than officiate this game. Like, you enjoy it. Like, if you're not enjoying it, what are you doing it for? That's like anything in life. But that point that you said about smiling at your partners and smiling at the table workers or the security guard or whomever it is, that's a great lesson for those of you who are listening in who are just getting started. I think that's something that carries you a long way in developing those relationships as you progress in your career.
And if you're like me, I have RBF, right? I mean,
You do.
It's funny. Off the court, I'll smile all day long, but on the court, for whatever reason, I get into this focus mode. But it's now you got to communicate with your partners. You got to communicate with the table when you go to the table. Hey, if I'm like in a serious mode, like trust me, I'm having fun. I'm good time. I'm approachable. And so Tyler and I are on the opposite. My RBF gets me in more trouble than his smiling does, probably, if I had to guess. But there's both sides of it, but you definitely have to communicate, that. And like Tyler and Bob said, you have to just make not only your crew comfortable, but everybody in that arena, in that gym, at the ticket office comfortable as you walk through that door. So, yeah, good stuff.
Same question back to you, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, like everyone thinks Tyler's because that's what they call him. And, now I have my real son's officiating back east. He works for Debbie back east. And we've always taught, as soon as you walk in the door, it's hello, because you never know when you're going to need those people. Maybe an escort to the bar. I've been chased out of more than one Division I gymnasium in my career. Knowing the scorer's table. It was funny. A guy from Oregon texted me today, the score team. Hey, I'm going to miss you this year. It's my 50th year. That kind of stuff is important to me, because when you walk away from the game, The only thing you have left is the memory. So what kind of memories do you want to have? You want to have the memory where you're pissed off at the world and you're yelling at the cheerleaders because they're out there on a 30-second timeout. Which I'm guilty of once in a while. But, it was funny. The other night we were watching the NFL and John Hussey was the white. I don't know John at all. I rep college football too, but I didn't know John. And my wife said to me, you see, and John always just doesn't look like he's happy. That's his face. And she goes, that's how you look sometimes. And I go, ooh. And then I'll go to heaven. That I watched the game tape of me from opening night, and I did have a little bit of this. So you got to have a rooting session, right? People to help you. Billy Kennedy will call me and just blast me just because he had nothing to do that. But that's what's made us better. Because if you can't tell each other the truth, you can't tell nobody.
See,
Absolutely.
Bob's got RBF. You do, but you communicate well and you talk to. I can't help but think that there's somebody on the East Coast that sees your son's name come up, Schofield, and they're in the locker room, right? Hey, don't say a word. Don't look at him wrong. Don't. And they walk out on the floor and like, oh, that was the most pleasant official we've ever dealt with.
I'll tell you,
because it's
Must
not Bob.
be related.
Bob.
Here's a great story. Last year, Riverside played at Harvard on a Tuesday, and my son had the game. Saturday, I had Riverside at USC that. I walk out. I don't know the coach at Riverside that well. He goes, boy, lucky us. 2 Scofields in 1 week. Classic.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. Hey, so much of officiating isn't just, it's not the rule books and the mechanics. This is especially true when it comes to communicating with coaches, players, and partners. If you were talking to a new official, what would you tell them about just the use of humor as a communication tool?
This is a good one because, I can say things that Bob can't say, and Bob can say things that I can't say, and I can say things that Nate can't say. But Nate can say something different so you have to be very careful in the words you choose. And starting out, you're going to be very direct. You're going to be very book oriented. You're going to be very rule book oriented. And as people start to get to know you, you can start introducing some of your humor into it. You can't just go out there and be jovial and jokester and just throw all the lines out there like this isn't my first rodeo. Those kind of things, I mean, you can't throw those ones out there.
Or that
But
one goes.
at some point down the line, 3 or 4, you can start becoming, these coaches see you more often, your players see you more often, your partners. Now you can start sprinkling a little bit of your humor in there and not just be, I'm on the rule, I bang, bang. No, I can now give you a little bit of who I am. But don't go at it too soon because then people will start taking you the wrong way.
Advice.
I like that. But I think, like as you get older, like a lot of these coaches now, I referee. And that's really dynamic. When I see all these, well, they're not, they're in their 40s, but I refereed them when they played in college. But I think if I was a new official coming up, I would look at someone that is an older referee, to watch some of their games. I would watch someone that was a little bit ahead of me, and then I would watch myself and try to find out what works for me. Because your body language is so important in this business. College basketball is run by the college coaches. We see it all the time. The coaches, they make the rules. Then you call what they ask. They don't like it. However, they run the game. So we're just the evil part of it that we got to go out there and do our job. And when we don't communicate with them, that's their number one complaint, is that they don't listen. They don't talk. Well, sometimes some of these coaches have you so scared as a young referee, you can't. You're afraid. And that's what the fear the fear of being afraid is scary because your boss can tell you, hey, just deal with it. Well, we all deal with people differently, as we know. So you have to find that fine line. And one line might work with Coach Ed, will never work with Coach T. Remember, I came from the men's side, so I talk to men's coaches totally different than I would talk to Tarvin. You just have to really be careful because it's a fine line. And I was on the first rodeo game with that referee who's had a nice career, but I was on that game.
It's definitely a nice career.
He had a nice career, but that was one of the dumbest things I ever heard.
Hey, for the sake of the podcast, you don't have to drop the official's name if you don't want to. But Bob, will you tell the story for the sake of the podcast?
Well, yeah,
Edit it as you can.
for the sake of the podcast, Larry Kristoyak was coaching at Montana, and they were playing Weber State, and Damon Lillard was playing for Weber, and we were struggling. It was me and John Weeks and Scott Twardowski, and
what NBA referee Scott Twardowski?
Yeah, that NBA referee. When we went in at halftime, and Larry Kristoyak, who's 6'10", played in the league 13 years, and crazy on the basketball floor. He started screaming at us, tell you whose effing rodeo it is, and I'm like, what is he talking about? And then Twardo, I go, oh, that was perfect. That was perfect. Now, we still got the second half to deal with him. Needless to say, it was not too much fun then.
So that actually kind of sets up this next question really well. So, and you, both of you, this question's for you both. Can you think of a time in a game where you were trying to lighten the mood and throw some humor into a situation that backfired? And then what happened? How did you recover? You don't have to name names of teams, anything like that, whatever you need to do to be okay with this story, but tell us about that when you're thinking you got the answer and you're being funny and not really. Well, we'll start with you.
Well, I have a habit of, and I've had enough of just getting everybody together and just saying, okay, next person that opens their mouth, you get a text. And over the course of my lifetime, it's worked probably 98%. Now, you make that threat, you better come through. Well, 98% of the time I did. Well, this one night I did. So this girl popped off. Now, even though I knew she popped off, I should have hit her, but I didn't. And next thing I know, we almost had a riot. And one of the girls from the other team, while the riot's going on, comes up to me and she goes, didn't you say? I go, yes, I did. She goes, look what. And that young lady became very close with me. But she was right. And I was embarrassed. And you know what? You can't plan for everything, for sure. So now, now there's no more idle threats. I just hit them down there because that was not good.
And for the listeners out there that officiate, he's 98% successful in that comment. Anybody else in the country is probably 2% successful.
You're right.
So keep that in mind.
The times where you try something and you try to use humor, you try and use, something that you think came in my head, this would be just a great idea, and I'm going to use it right now. You're like, holy moly, that did not go well. So, there's those times where you're trying to explain something and you kind of might be a little pop-off-ish or, a little smart with it. The times that I've tried that, it's not gone well for me. And I've had to go back and apologize and be like, hey, you know what? What I said to you last quarter or what I said to you at the last time out, that wasn't appropriate. I apologize and I will do better. And so every time that I've tried to do that, it just hasn't worked for me. So my advice would be, don't try it unless you're really, really good at it, which is the 0.1%. And then if you do try it and you do fail, go apologize. Just don't be the one to be like, I'm right, I'm always right. Just apologize. I'm sorry. I should have never said that. and let's move on.
And I think if you use your personality, right, 100% of the time, right, you're not going to try anything that's going to get you in trouble, right? If you use your personality and you trust the personality and then the person that you are, I'm not going to go out and try to attempt something that Bob said, because that's not my personality. And the second that I do that, 99% of the time, it's going to be a fail. So I think if you trust your personality and who you are as a person and your communication skills and how you communicate, and you personalize your communication, you're going to be a lot more successful responding. And look, we all have a sense of humor, but don't go outside of, what you're comfortable with, because, and it's not needed. It's really not. And so, hey, on this podcast, we have a mission from the A to Zebra podcast every week, and that is to educate, elevate, and excite. Bob, what is something you could tell a potential official about joining the avocation that would inspire or excite them?
Well, I'll tell you, because I'm still active with the high school in Tucson, and I see the numbers so down, so depressing. I think what I would do is I would reach out to the schools. After you're done playing, you go to college or whatever. Some kids don't go to college, but I still believe you go in and get the kids, try to get your hooks in them, and you get them into one sport, you got a chance at 2 or 3. I still believe it's just having the right person send the message. But I would tell the kids, you want to make a little bit of extra money, you want to stay with the game, and you want to probably stay in pretty good shape too. Some of the football officials I know need a little help here and there, but in high school. But I would think that all you got to do is try to get to them to say, hey, give back to the game. And if you have 1,600 high school athletes and you can get 200 of them, and then out of those 250 you're making headway. And I think that, and I'm trying to be more active with that, because it is a great avocation. When I started doing Division I for $125 a game, and I look at what it is today, the problem is referees of today are like society of today. They're in the league for a year and they want the conference championship. Well, that's not how it's taken. There's people been in the league 30 years that have never done a conference, have never been to the NCAA tournament. That doesn't mean they're not good officials. That doesn't mean they're not helping the product. But some people, younger people that move up the ladder fast, forget about these people. Those people are the one that paved the way for where it's at.
That's such a good point. We talk a lot at the high school level about that. There's this need for instant gratification, and if they don't get the state tournament by year 2, they quit. And it's like, well, that's not how this works. Like you aren't tried and true. We don't have that trust in you yet to go work a state championship game, and they want too much too soon. And often, because of the shortage, and you mentioned that, we've had to put officials in situations that they're probably not ready for. And it's always to their demise, because we're accelerating them. They're calling varsity before they're actually at that level. And, trying to tell people you need to be patient with this process. It's hard to get people to be patient. As somebody who's personally impatient, I understand that, but it's something that we don't want to set them up for failure. So when you try to have that conversation with somebody who's new into high school and they think that they should be above where they are, getting them to kind of check their ego and understand the process it's a challenge sometimes. But that, we're doing it. When we don't give you that right away, or you haven't earned that right away, it's because we're trying to protect you from potentially failing, because we don't want you in over your head. So I think that's talking about that, Bob, it definitely resonated with me from, what I do at the high school level.
And Bob, real quick, you mentioned something that really kind of struck, right? Is that a lot of these younger officials kind of elevate at a really high rate, and they forget about some of these veterans that have been there. And so, huge Yellowstone fan. So of course I watched the new episode after a 2-year wait, And there was a quote in there, and immediately I paused it. I went back and to set up the scene a little bit, not to ruin anything for anyone, but there's this old timer that's pretty much making spurs, and these unique spurs, and so one cowboy tells the other cowboy, when he's gone, we're all out of legends, with no one trying to be the next one. And man, what you just said is huge, because yeah, we're all trying to climb the ladder, and we're all trying to be that old timer, right? But we're not actually learning the craft, right? We're not learning the craft that the legends, and how the legends learned it. We want the instant gratification. So when he said, with no one trying to be the next one, right? I think that a lot of times we're not trying to be the next legend. We're just trying to be the next NCAA tournament official, or the next high school state championship tournament official. We're not actually thinking about what it took them to actually get to that point and what it means to them. And so thank you for saying that, because man, immediately I had to pull up my phone because I wrote that thing down, and so good stuff.
It's a great quote, by the way. Nate and I talk all the time about that, making sure that you give credence to your mentors and the people who helped you along the way, and that full understanding of you didn't get there on your own. Somebody at some point took you under their wing. I'm looking at probably a really good example right now of Bob and Tyler, and I think it's unfortunate when somebody gets to whatever that next level is, and they kind of just forget their state high school association, or forget the person who took time with them in the car on the way home, or called them after a game to give them some feedback, and those people that were really critical in their growth, and they no longer remember and honor that. I say it all the time, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and when we forget who those giants are, we're doing a disservice to this avocation or profession. And it's something that is so important to me, because I'm at the age where I've kind of seen some of those legends on the field or on the court and then retire, and now they're just waiting for people to call them and talk to them about officiating. Like, they want to be involved, they want to have those conversations, and I think we owe it to them to keep them involved in some way. I'll get off my soapbox, but certainly what Bob said kind of triggered both Nate and I in the same direction. So thank you for saying that.
That's one part of the business I'll never understand. I still talk to guys, Terry McIntyre, Steve Good, all these old time, Larry Shepard, all these guys that I used to referee with, that, for $125, we would share rooms, 3-door room, because we were making them. But I would always tell these young kids when they were evaluated, I go, you know what? They might have some old school ways. It might not be the most current, but just show them the respect of listening, and that's okay. Just listen. You don't have to art. It's not about an art. And the one thing you learn, and I'm sure the old-time guys will tell you, as soon as you retire from this profession, there are very few people saying, it's just the nature of our beast. Me and Chris talk about it, very few people stay in touch, and for a variety of reasons, right? Because back in the old days, before we had cell phones and email, you had to call the house on Sunday. Hey, what time? Who's getting the car in Salt Lake on Tuesday? It's totally different, because a lot of times, a lot of people, you never talk to them until you get to the arena.
I was lucky enough to grow up in two high school groups that have less than 40 people in it. So who do you think I was hanging out with all the time? It was the same people all the time. And to this day, each one of them, my basketball group and my football group, they all want to know where I'm going. They all want to know what I'm doing. And it's, for me, I'm still active in those groups because those are my people. Those are the ones that brought me up. Those are the ones that I sat on the other side of the bar because I wasn't 21 yet, and they sat on the bar side so we could have a conversation and talk about it. But I was still there. They're the ones that invited me to go watch a game. They're the ones that said, come with us. Those are the guys and gals that started this whole thing. And so it just nails the whole point altogether of kind of the linking of arms and who brought you in, and do you still talk to that person that still brought you in? Do you still communicate with the people that you worked with? You know what? That's what was fortunate about small groups. Large groups, a little bit different, but hey, those are the, we're all, so
they invested in you. They spent their
And
time. They didn't have to, but it's because they had someone who did the same thing for them. And Nate used to, when we were in the New Mexico office, he would always tell officials, like, if you get hired, you better call Dana. Like, don't let her find out from someone else, because she's been fighting for you. And sure enough, I get those calls. And even now that I'm not there, I still get the calls and text messages. And it means everything. When you've taken time as an administrator or as a veteran official, when you've taken that time and energy to help somebody or advocate for them or be an ally for them, and they kind of forget about you, that's like, that hurts. It's just like, man, do that for, and you're doing it selflessly and you want people to get better. But when you kind of get cast aside because they don't need you anymore, it's just like, oh, well, okay, I see how that is. Like, I know Bob's comment kind of spurred a longer conversation, but that was great, because I think that that's something that especially the current generation of the younger officials needed to hear that.
absolutely. And I know I just had this conversation with my absolute hero. He's my hero, my mentor, just my guy, and that's Jack Jones. And being retired a couple years, he's feeling that, and you know, and luckily, he's got a high school assigner down there that's involved him, and he's giving back to that group. And but man, like, you're talking about a guy at the top of his game, and everybody just loves, and I get it. It's not that they don't you dislike him anymore. It's just we get busy in our and we talked about that. He talked about that. It's like, when you're in your season, you're just in your day-to-day grind, and you're trying to get from one game to the next game, and you're just trying to figure it out. So it's not personal, but you're out of that circle, and so continue to give back to the legends, and continue, because continue to try to be the next legend.
But so, Tyler, as a part of the education piece, what is something that you didn't know about officiating? And since you do two sports, either football or basketball, before you started, you wish you would have known
goodness
that you
gracious,
didn't know that
there's
may
so
help
much
somebody else in the
that
future?
I wish I would have known. Wish I would have known how competitive it was. I wish I would have known how to be patient. I wish, it was hit on earlier that we want so much so fast that we're not ready for it. And you get disappointed, you get discouraged, and you think, gosh, I worked the first round playoff game, then I probably should work the next week. And I should probably work the week after that. And you want everything to be given to you right away without just taking the time and looking back and saying, you know what, this is a good first step. Next year, my goal is to be step number 2. And my next year is to take the next step up and be step number 3. So to really just take it all in and understand that there's a process, and understand that our competitive nature and our competitive will and fortitude to do the best sometimes doesn't work out, and we can't be disappointed with that. Yeah, we can be for a second, but we gotta, hey, how can I improve? And it's not anybody else's fault except for mine. But I would say that I wouldn't have known how rewarding it was. I wouldn't have known the friendships, the companionships, the family outside of the actual court or the field or the whatever it is, that you can call somebody at any given time. You can text somebody at any given time, whether you want to have dinner, whether you want to go have a drink, whether you want to go on vacation. All these things I would have never known. And I don't think that people really know that that is what the officiating family is all about, that we really do have each other's backs, and that we want each other to do the best that we possibly can. But as the competitive nature says, we always want to be that one step above somebody else, but be happy for everybody else. Be the person that's pushing them and saying, hey, you know what? Congratulations on your state playoff assignment. Hey, congratulations on making the Division III national tournament. Hey, congratulations on working the Division I national tournament. And just be you. Be the person that wants to be around everybody, and be a sponge. Soak everything in, because you never know when this thing's over.
That is so well stated. And I think about the whole things that people don't know about officiating often. I think that the only thing that many sports fans know about officials are they're the people that are calling fouls on the team that I'm cheering for, and I don't like them. It is such a special family, and it's people who are really giving back. They're passionate about a sport, and that's at all levels. Because when I think about people like the two of you, Nate as well, who are, college officials, and the give back to high school associations that all of you do and have done, and that's what keeps officiating going. And I talk a lot about officiating immortality, how when you're a mentor or when you're paying it forward to the high school association, you're always going to live on. There's going to be people who are doing things the way that you did them or remember a lesson that you taught them, and it's just part of them. And I think that is that thread that we all have. I can go into a room of officials who I do not know and their family, period. It doesn't matter where they are, which state they're in, which sport they officiate, what level. Those are my people. Like that's my tribe. And I'm always excited to be in those situations where I get to meet new people and make new friendships and connect other people, because that's what, we're our only fans in this industry. And I get that. And it's an important part of it, because those are the people that'll pick you up when you've had the hard game or celebrate when you succeed. And that being able to be humble enough to congratulate someone else when maybe they got something that you didn't, that's hard, but it's critical. They have to know that people are cheering for them too. And that was really well said. Those are good little nuggets for somebody who
And
might
I think,
be
Dana,
starting out and
you
watching
nailed
this video.
it on
Tyler,
the family
thank you
piece,
for that.
because through NASO and through Ref Education Forum and all of these avenues, so for me, on the executive board of the Washington State Officials Association, just the way I watch you in a room, especially at the summit, and watching people that you don't even know come up to you and get to meet you, and how genuine you are about it, and how these people then gravitate to you every single time, year after year after
Dana
year.
Pappas.
And now, like you said, they are family. And so that's testament to you and the way you bring everybody together and make it happen. So to me, that's awesome.
Appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
telling me I get to, as Mike Pereira says, I'm cruising on Dana's coattail.
So do I.
I follow
So do I,
around
because
at
then
those
she
things,
introduces
and
me to
I'm
Mike, and
like
then
her
I
bodyguard,
get to
but
meet
it's
Gene Sterator, and then, just adds. It's really, really cool.
Oh,
yeah.
and that's the best part, is it's just 99.9% of the people who officiate are exceptionally good people. And if I can help people meet each other and find ways to connect and make officiating better, I'm all in. Like it's never been about me. That's not what it is. It's about everybody else and how much I love officials and how much officials have given me in my life. Wouldn't be me if not for officials. I mean, that's the summary. I would not be the person I am, the professional I am, without the officiating family. And I'm aware of that every day. And I used to have a conversation every morning at the NMAA office. We'd walk in and it was, what can we do for officials today? Like, how can we make things better? Because that's at the center of who we are. That's at the center of who you guys are. I mean, I think of everything you've done for us over the years, both of you. And it's just, it's that whole old overused cliche of it takes a village, but it really does.
So,
Yep. And I'll forever be Dana's assistant to all circles, unless you're Violet. She calls me Dana's girl, right? So
she does a speech in New Mexico. That was awesome. Do you have anything before we kind of wrap for
hey,
this episode?
thank you guys. This has been awesome. I look forward to working with you guys. Of course, anytime I'm on the court with you guys, I will see you guys on the schedule, and it's cheers, right? And so I appreciate you guys giving that to me. So thank you, and thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Absolutely. And Bob, Tyler, thank you guys so much for your friendship, your support, the laughs we've had over the years. You're two of my all-time favorite human beings. And I see Tyler at the summit every year. I haven't seen Bob in person in like 100 years. So I need to figure out a reason to go to Tucson time in the future.
No,
because it's
Mexico.
Been way too
You
long.
gotta.
Thank you guys both for being on it and for everything you do for officiating.
Thanks again for joining us. Check us out on our socials: Facebook, Instagram, and X. to find episode recaps and previews of upcoming episodes. See you next week.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra Podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.